Have you ever wondered what happens to a place when the maps stop mentioning it? Not when it sinks beneath the waves or burns to ashes, but when sailors simply stop talking about it. When captains no longer draw it on their charts, merchants avoid saying its name, and the sea itself seems to cover its tracks. Tonight, we're setting sail toward one of those places. A pirate port that history nearly forgot. So settle in, get comfortable, and imagine that you're standing on the deck of a slow-moving brigantine sometime around the early 1700s. The wind is soft, the lantern swings lazily overhead, and somewhere beyond the horizon lies an island where every dock tells a different story. Our voyage begins just before sunrise. The first thing you notice isn't the smell of gunpowder or rum. It's bread. Fresh bread drifting across the harbor from tiny stone ovens built right beside the water. Bakers wake before the pirates do, kneading dough while the tide creeps in around their feet. In fact, many notorious pirate settlements relied on ordinary tradespeople. Bakers, coopers, blacksmiths, and fishermen, who kept daily life running while the legends stole the spotlight. As your ship glides closer, another surprising detail comes into view. The harbor is remarkably organized. Rather than random ships scattered across the bay, vessels are anchored in careful rows according to their draft and cargo. Even pirate ports often needed strict routines to avoid collisions and chaos. Without some order, hundreds of sailors trying to unload treasure, timber, spices, and supplies would have turned the waterfront into complete confusion. A bell rings from somewhere ashore. Not to announce an attack, not to celebrate a victory, simply to mark breakfast. Many ports around the Caribbean and Atlantic world used bells to coordinate work throughout the day, allowing dock crews, merchants, and craftsmen to stay synchronized long before everyone owned a reliable clock. As you finally step onto the wooden pier, your boots creak across planks polished smooth by thousands of footsteps. Some belong to pirates. Others belong to escaped sailors seeking new lives. Some belong to merchants pretending not to ask questions. And a surprising number belong to women who owned businesses, ran taverns, managed boarding houses, or sold supplies. Forgotten ports were often more diverse than popular stories suggest, with entire families building lives alongside infamous sea raiders. The streets ahead twist in unexpected directions. No grand city planner designed them. Buildings simply appeared wherever someone found enough room between warehouses and palm trees. Over time, narrow alleys became permanent roads, creating a maze that visiting naval officers often found confusing. Locals could disappear around two corners and seem to vanish completely. Following one crooked lane uphill, you notice something even stranger. There are no impressive stone castles watching over the bay. Instead, the settlement trusts hidden lookout towers built on nearby cliffs. A single scout with a spyglass could spot sails hours before arriving ships reached shore, giving everyone below plenty of time to prepare, negotiate, or quietly disappear. The lookout raises no alarm today. Instead, he waves. Your arrival isn't unusual. Ships from every imaginable background pass through this forgotten harbor. Some carry sugar. Others carry tobacco, cloth, lumber, or livestock. A few carry cargo that no customs officer would ever approve of. Pirate ports often thrived because they welcomed merchants who couldn't easily trade elsewhere, creating bustling economies that blurred the line between legal commerce and outright smuggling. As morning sunlight spills across the roofs, children chase chickens through muddy streets while old sailors repair fishing nets outside weathered cottages. It's almost disappointingly ordinary. The famous duels, buried treasure maps, and cannon battles happen only occasionally. Most days are filled with people fixing roofs, mending sails, cooking meals, arguing over prices, and waiting for ships that may arrive tomorrow or next month. And perhaps that's the greatest mystery of this forgotten pirate port. Not how it survived, but how a place filled with so many lives, so many voices, and so many stories could slowly fade until history remembered only the pirates and forgot nearly everyone else. Here's the continuation in the same calm, story-driven style, adding another natural sequence of sleepy historical facts while gently moving the narrative deeper into the forgotten pirate port. You continue walking inland, leaving the docks behind as the morning grows warmer. The noise of hammering fades into the distance, replaced by quieter sounds. Wind brushes through palm leaves overhead. A rooster crows somewhere beyond a fence. Someone is playing a simple tune on a weathered fiddle, though they're clearly in no hurry to finish the song. The town seems to move at the pace of the tide. Around the next corner sits an open market shaded by patched canvas awnings. Instead of glittering piles of gold, the stalls are filled with things far more practical. Salted fish, oranges, candles, rope, tobacco pipes, dried herbs, and stacks of worn boots waiting for new owners. It might seem surprising, but many pirate settlements depended less on treasure than on ordinary trade. Gold coins could disappear quickly, but barrels of flour, clean water, nails, and fresh sailcloth were what truly kept a port alive from one season to the next. An elderly merchant notices your curiosity and smiles. He points towards several coins laid neatly across his table. No two look exactly alike. One bears the face of a Spanish king. Another carries Dutch markings. A third has been clipped around the edges until it's nearly oval. In busy pirate harbors, dozens of different currencies often circulated together. Shopkeepers became experts at judging the weight and purity of silver rather than trusting whatever design happened to be stamped on the surface. As you wander farther through the market, a familiar smell drifts through the air. Coffee, freshly roasted. Many ports throughout the Caribbean became early gathering places for coffee houses where sailors exchanged rumors from across the Atlantic. Long before newspapers reached distant islands, conversations over steaming cups spread news faster than official announcements ever could. You stop beside one crowded table. No one is shouting. Instead, voices stay low. One sailor claims to have seen a whale larger than his own ship. Another insists an island vanished overnight beneath a blanket of fog. A woman selling maps quietly corrects both stories without even looking up from her work. In ports like this, information could be worth far more than treasure. A safe harbor, a hidden reef, or the latest naval patrol route might decide whether a captain returned wealthy or never returned at all. Leaving the market behind, you notice that nearly every building has a porch. Some are narrow. Some stretch across entire storefronts. They aren't there just for decoration. In tropical climates, covered porches created precious shade while allowing air to circulate, making homes and shops noticeably cooler long before electricity or fans existed. Farther uphill stands a weather-beaten warehouse with enormous wooden doors. Inside, workers carefully stack barrels one atop another until they nearly touch the ceiling. The shape isn't accidental. Barrels became one of history's most useful inventions for ocean trade because they could be rolled by a single person, packed tightly aboard ships, and protected everything from flour and salted meat to gunpowder and wine. One cooper, the skilled craftsperson who builds barrels, taps each finished cask with a small mallet. He isn't making music. He's listening. A slight change in sound can reveal tiny flaws invisible to the eye. A poorly made barrel might leak fresh water during a month-long voyage, turning a profitable expedition into a desperate struggle for survival. You pause outside and glance back toward the harbor. From here, the ships seem almost peaceful. Their masts sway gently like a forest of tall, leafless trees. Seagulls circle overhead. The tide has already risen enough to lift every vessel a little higher than when you arrived. The port feels less like a den of dangerous outlaws and more like an enormous machine, with every baker, carpenter, mapmaker, fisherman, cooper, merchant, and sailor serving as another carefully fitted gear. Perhaps that's why so many of these places vanished with surprisingly little trace. When trade routes shifted, storms changed coastlines, or governments tightened control over the seas, the gears simply stopped turning. Families packed what they could carry. Ships sailed away. Wooden buildings slowly rotted beneath the tropical sun. Nature reclaimed the roads. And within a generation, travelers passing nearby might never guess that thousands of people had once laughed, argued, traded, and dreamed on this very shore. Only the wind remembered where the streets had been. Here's the next 6-minute segment, continuing the gentle narrative while naturally weaving in another series of historical facts. By late afternoon, the heat settles over the forgotten port like a soft blanket. Even the busiest workers begin moving more slowly. You follow a dusty path that climbs toward the highest point overlooking the harbor, where a weathered lighthouse stands against the blue sky. It isn't especially tall, and it certainly isn't grand. The white paint has long since faded, leaving patches of gray stone exposed beneath years of salty wind. Yet every sailor entering the bay searches for it. Before modern navigation systems, landmarks like this could mean the difference between reaching safety or wrecking on hidden reefs. A familiar tower, a crooked palm tree, or even an oddly shaped cliff often appeared on generations of hand-drawn charts. The lighthouse keeper greets you with a nod but says little. His real companion is a large journal resting on a wooden table. Every morning and every evening, he writes down the weather, the wind direction, the strength of the tides, the visibility across the bay. For centuries, many coastal keepers carefully recorded local conditions, creating unexpected archives that historians still study today to understand changing climates and shipping patterns. Outside, a narrow trail leads to an old signal platform built from rough timber. There are no telephones, no radios. Instead, colored flags hang neatly folded beside a pair of polished brass binoculars. When ships appear on the horizon, combinations of flags can send surprisingly detailed messages to the town below. A single pattern might announce friendly merchants. Another could warn of disease aboard a vessel. Yet another might signal that naval patrols have been spotted nearby. As you descend the hill again, your path crosses a cemetery tucked beneath twisting fig trees. The graves are simple. Some have carved names. Others bear only initials. A few have no markings at all. Life at sea was dangerous even without battles. Disease, accidents, hurricanes, spoiled food, and shipwrecks claimed countless lives, leaving many sailors buried far from the places where they were born. At the far end of the cemetery stands one unusual stone. Instead of a cross or family crest, it carries the carving of an anchor. Such symbols often reflected a person's profession rather than their wealth, reminding visitors that identity in port towns was closely tied to the sea itself. You continue walking until laughter echoes from an open courtyard. Several carpenters are repairing a damaged longboat. One shapes fresh planks while another heats sticky black pitch over a fire. The smell is impossible to miss. Pitch made from pine resin or tar helped seal wooden hulls against seawater, and maintaining that waterproof layer was a constant battle. Ships rarely stayed in perfect condition for long, especially after months crossing warm oceans filled with shipworms that bored into exposed timber. Nearby, bundles of hemp rope hang from wooden racks. Some ropes are thicker than your arm. Others are no wider than a finger. A large sailing vessel could carry miles of rope in total, each line serving a specific purpose. Experienced sailors memorized dozens of names and functions, knowing exactly which rope controlled which sail, spar, or anchor. As evening approaches, the harbor slowly changes character. The busy loading cranes fall silent. Market stalls close. Smoke rises from kitchen fires across the settlement. Families gather outside their homes where cooler air finally begins to drift inland from the sea. Someone starts telling stories. Not about buried treasure, not about sea monsters, but about ordinary things. The unusually large turtle caught last spring, the baker whose donkey wandered into church, the fisherman who accidentally proposed marriage to the wrong sister after too much rum. Ports survived on memories like these just as much as on legends. In fact, many historians believe that everyday conversations preserved local history far better than official records, which often ignored the lives of common people entirely. The sun sinks lower until the harbor glows gold. Every mast casts a long shadow across the water. For a few peaceful moments, it becomes difficult to imagine that cannons ever fired here or that notorious captains once argued along these very docks. The forgotten pirate port seems content simply to exist. And perhaps that quiet evening is the greatest disguise it ever possessed. Because when darkness finally arrives, and lanterns begin flickering one by one along the waterfront, another side of the town quietly wakes up. One filled with whispered passwords, hidden rooms, secret cargoes, and deals made under the cover of moonlight, where almost nothing is written down, and almost everything depends on trust. I'd continue by transitioning naturally into the nighttime life of the port, keeping the tone soothing and atmospheric while introducing another set of historically inspired facts. Night settles over the harbor almost without anyone noticing. The last streaks of orange disappear behind the sea, replaced by a blanket of stars so bright that they seem to outnumber the lanterns below. You wander back toward the waterfront, where the mood has quietly changed. The merchants have gone home. The fishermen have tied their boats. But a different crowd is only now beginning its day. A small tavern at the end of the pier glows with candlelight spilling through crooked windows. The sign above the door swings gently in the breeze, squeaking with every gust. Inside, the room is calmer than the legends would have you believe. No chairs are flying through the air. No one is swinging from the rafters. Instead, groups of sailors sit around rough wooden tables, speaking softly over mugs of ale and watered rum. In reality, alcohol aboard ships was often diluted with water to make supplies last longer and improve the taste of water that had been stored in barrels for weeks. A man in the corner unfolds a faded chart across the table. Several others lean closer. The map is covered in tiny handwritten notes squeezed between coastlines and islands. Many navigators treated charts as living documents, constantly adding warnings about reefs, freshwater springs, safe anchorages, and dangerous currents that official maps had never included. One sailor traces a finger toward a cluster of small islands. Another quietly shakes his head. The route has changed. Sandbars can shift after powerful storms, and entire channels may become too shallow for large vessels. Before satellite imagery, even familiar coastlines could surprise experienced captains after a hurricane season. As you leave the tavern, moonlight reflects across the water like polished silver. Several boats move silently through the harbor without raising full sails. Instead, crews rely on oars to avoid unnecessary noise. In ports where smuggling flourished, quiet arrivals after dark were often more valuable than fast ones. A shipment unloaded without attracting attention could earn far greater profits than cargo delivered in broad daylight. You notice workers carrying wooden crates onto a dock. None of the boxes are marked. There are no labels, no shipping records, just careful hands and whispered instructions. Throughout history, anonymous cargo was surprisingly common in regions where taxes, trade restrictions, or competing empires encouraged merchants to avoid official inspections. Sometimes the contents were perfectly harmless, cloth, tea, or spices, but secrecy itself became part of the business. Further along the shoreline sits a building with unusually thick stone walls. Its windows are narrow, and its heavy door remains locked. This is the powder magazine. Gunpowder had to be stored away from kitchens, candles, and blacksmith shops because even a small spark could trigger a catastrophic explosion. Many ports enforced strict rules about where powder barrels could be kept, knowing one careless mistake might destroy half the settlement. A watchman patrols nearby carrying nothing more than a lantern and a long staff. He pauses every few minutes to listen. Not for enemies. For fire. In wooden towns packed closely together, accidental fires were among the greatest dangers anyone faced. A single overturned candle could spread from roof to roof before sunrise, especially during dry seasons. The breeze grows cooler. From somewhere offshore comes the rhythmic creaking of ships rocking gently at anchor. Their rigging hums softly in the wind, producing faint notes that almost sound like distant singing. Old sailors often claimed they could identify their own vessel by these nighttime sounds alone, recognizing familiar patterns in the movement of ropes, masts, and spars. You sit quietly at the end of the pier. Above you stretches the same night sky that guided countless navigators across impossible distances. Long before compasses became reliable and accurate, mariners looked to the stars for direction, memorizing constellations that rose and set with remarkable consistency throughout the year. One elderly captain points toward the northern horizon. He doesn't speak loudly. He simply smiles and says that the stars never ask for payment, only patience. Around midnight, the forgotten pirate port grows still once again. Lanterns are extinguished one after another. Doors close. Even the waves seem quieter. Hidden deals have been made. Secret messages have changed hands. Tomorrow, no official record will mention any of it. And that may explain why this remarkable harbor slowly slipped through history's fingers. So much of its story lived only in whispered conversations beneath moonlit skies. When those voices finally faded away, the silence remained, leaving behind little more than weathered docks, buried foundations, and the endless sound of the tide washing against the shore, as though the sea itself had decided to keep the port's greatest secrets forever. Here's the next installment, maintaining the same slow, immersive bedtime pacing while introducing another woven set of historical facts that gently advance the story. When the first hint of dawn appears on the horizon, the forgotten pirate port is already awake again. Not with shouting, not with cannon fire, but with the soft scrape of brooms sweeping yesterday's dust from wooden porches. An old woman opens the shutters of her tiny shop and places fresh herbs in neat bundles outside the door. Across the street, a stable boy leads sleepy horses toward a watering trough while gulls argue overhead. For all its dangerous reputation, the town survives because ordinary mornings continue to arrive. You decide to follow the narrow lane that runs behind the warehouses instead of the busier road by the docks. Before long, you discover a row of enormous rain barrels standing beneath sloping roofs. Each one is nearly as tall as a grown man. Fresh water was one of the greatest treasures in any coastal settlement. Many islands had few reliable springs, so homes and businesses often collected rainwater from rooftops, storing it carefully for the dry season and for ships preparing long voyages across the ocean. A young carpenter nearby is repairing the wooden gutter that feeds one of the barrels. He explains that even a small leak can waste hundreds of gallons over time. People here have learned that survival often depends on tiny details. As you continue walking, you hear the rhythmic tapping of metal against stone. A blacksmith is sharpening dozens of identical knives. Not swords, kitchen knives, fishing knives, carving tools. Despite popular imagination, most blades produced in busy ports served practical purposes rather than combat. Sailmakers, cooks, fishermen, coopers, and shipwrights all relied on sharp tools every single day. Outside the forge, several anchors rest on heavy wooden blocks. Each one looks impossibly massive. Yet the blacksmith laughs when someone calls them indestructible. Iron anchors often bent, cracked, or wore down after years exposed to saltwater. Repairing them became an important business in ports where replacement metal could be expensive or difficult to import. Near the waterfront, a boy carefully chalks numbers onto stacked crates while another copies the figures into a leather notebook. You ask what they're doing. "Counting twice," he replies. Mistakes in cargo records could cost fortunes. Experienced dock workers frequently checked inventories again and again before ships departed, knowing that one missing barrel might spark weeks of arguments between merchants separated by an entire ocean. The lane eventually opens into a broad courtyard where sailmakers spread enormous sheets of canvas across wooden frames. Several women and men kneel together, pushing heavy needles through thick fabric with surprising speed. A single large sailing ship could require thousands upon thousands of hand-stitched seams. Strong sails were every bit as important as sturdy hulls, because even the fastest vessel became helpless if its canvas tore apart during a storm. One sailmaker pauses to rub wax along a length of thread before continuing. The wax helps strengthen the stitching and prevents it from tangling. Small techniques like this were passed from apprentice to apprentice for generations, often without ever being written down. By midday, the marketplace is filled once more. A storyteller stands atop an overturned barrel entertaining children with tales of impossible adventures. He claims to have met a giant octopus. He insists he once sailed around the edge of the world. No one entirely believes him. Yet everyone smiles anyway. Ports attracted storytellers almost as naturally as they attracted sailors. With people arriving from dozens of distant lands, local legends mixed freely with foreign myths until fact and fiction became nearly impossible to separate. As you wander farther, you notice tiny symbols carved into the corners of several buildings. A fish, a star, a crescent moon, a hammer. Many craftsmen marked their workshops with recognizable signs because customers and visiting sailors could not always read written words. Long before modern street numbers, visual symbols helped people navigate unfamiliar neighborhoods. The afternoon breeze picks up again, carrying the smell of salt and pine tar through every alley. Ships sway gently against their moorings. Children skip stones across the shallows. Laundry flutters between second-story balconies. Looking around, it's almost impossible to imagine that this peaceful place will one day disappear from common memory. Not because it lacked importance, but because ports built from timber, rope, canvas, and ordinary lives often vanish quietly. The sea rusts the nails. Rain softens the beams. Plants push through abandoned floors. And little by little, the jungle and shoreline reclaim everything. Until one day, centuries later, an explorer uncovers a single weathered coin beneath the roots of a tree and begins to wonder who once called this forgotten harbor home. The answer, as always, is far more people than history ever remembered. I'll keep the same gentle, immersive tone and continue the story with another 8 to 9 woven facts, gradually revealing more of the port's hidden history. The days begin to blend together in the forgotten pirate port. Morning becomes afternoon. Afternoon slips quietly into evening. And after a while you stop thinking of yourself as a visitor. You simply become another face wandering the narrow streets. One cool morning, you follow the sound of chisels striking stone until you arrive at a small dockyard hidden behind a line of warehouses. Here, the biggest ships never enter. The water is too shallow. Instead, tiny flat-bottomed boats ferry cargo back and forth between the anchored vessels and the shore. In many historic harbors, especially those surrounded by sandbanks or coral reefs, larger ships had to remain offshore while smaller craft handled the final leg of unloading. The little boats move constantly, back and forth, like ants carrying crumbs much larger than themselves. An old sailor watching from the pier tells you that patience is the strongest muscle on any ship. Judging by his weathered face, he may be right. Nearby, several workers are carefully scraping shells and seaweed from the bottom of an overturned fishing boat. Marine growth could slow a vessel surprisingly quickly. Even a thin layer of barnacles created enough drag to reduce speed, forcing crews to haul boats ashore from time to time for cleaning and repairs. One of the workers pauses and holds up a tiny shell no larger than a fingernail. He grins as though he has discovered buried treasure. In a way, he has. Every shell removed means a little less resistance in the water and a little more speed when chasing favorable winds. The path continues toward a quiet cove where nets hang drying between tall wooden poles. Some are patched so many times that almost none of the original rope remains. Fishing nets represented enormous investments of labor. A damaged net might require days of careful repair by hand, making skilled netmakers highly valued members of coastal communities. A young girl sits beneath one of the poles with remarkable concentration. Her fingers tie knot after knot after knot. Without looking up, she completes each loop perfectly. You realize she has probably practiced since childhood. Across the beach, several turtles crawl slowly through the sand. No one disturbs them. Many islands depended on turtles as an important food source during long voyages, but local people also understood that taking too many at once would leave fewer for future seasons. Long before the word conservation became common, practical experience often encouraged careful harvesting. As the afternoon sun climbs higher, you reach a narrow warehouse where bundles of timber are stacked beneath an open roof. The wood comes from many different places. Straight pine from colder lands, dense tropical hardwood from nearby forests, flexible ash carried across the ocean. Shipbuilders often selected specific types of wood for different parts of a vessel, matching strength, weight, and flexibility to the job at hand. One carpenter invites you inside. He places his palm against a curved beam and says it grew that way naturally. Rather than forcing straight wood into difficult shapes, builders frequently searched forests for branches whose natural curves perfectly matched the ribs and supports needed inside a ship's hull. Nature had already done half the work. Toward evening, clouds gather unexpectedly. The first drops of rain strike the rooftops with soft taps. Within minutes, gutters begin pouring water into barrels all across town. Children cheer. Shopkeepers smile. Nobody rushes for shelter. Rain means fresh drinking water. It washes dust from the streets and fills cisterns that may sustain the settlement for weeks. When the shower passes, the entire harbor smells cleaner somehow. The boards beneath your feet shine in the fading sunlight. Far offshore, a rainbow stretches across the sea. An elderly navigator standing nearby studies it thoughtfully before returning his attention to the sky above. He isn't admiring the colors. He's watching the clouds behind them. Experienced sailors often read subtle changes in cloud shapes, wind direction, and humidity to anticipate approaching weather long before any storm reached the horizon. As darkness settles once again, lanterns flicker to life along the docks. Their reflections tremble gently on the water. You realize that the port's greatest treasure may never have been hidden gold or stolen silver. It may have been knowledge, the quiet skills passed from one pair of hands to another, the memory of tides, the feel of good timber, the sound of healthy rigging, the perfect knot tied without looking. Skills so ordinary that no one bothered to write them down. And when the people finally sailed away, those invisible treasures disappeared with them, leaving behind only broken foundations and unanswered questions beneath the whispering palms. Here's the next chapter, continuing the relaxing narrative while introducing another woven collection of sleepy historical facts. Several weeks seem to pass before you notice something peculiar. The harbor has no clock tower. No great bell marks the passing hours. No official voice announces when work should begin or end. Instead, everyone seems to read the day by looking at the sea. At sunrise, fishermen untie their boats. When the tide reaches a certain stone near the western pier, merchants begin loading cargo. And when the shadows from the palm trees stretch across the marketplace, the bakers know it is time to prepare tomorrow's dough. For centuries, many coastal communities measured time through familiar patterns in nature, relying on tides, sunlight, and routine as much as mechanical clocks. You leave the harbor and wander inland until you reach a cluster of gardens surrounded by low coral walls. At first glance they appear ordinary. Rows of beans, a few herbs, several fruit trees. But tucked between them are patches of cassava, a hardy root crop that could survive difficult growing conditions and feed entire families. Across much of the Caribbean and surrounding regions, cassava became one of the most dependable sources of food because it stored well and tolerated poor soils. A woman harvesting the roots smiles and brushes the dirt from one with her sleeve. She warns that it must be prepared properly before eating. Raw cassava can contain naturally occurring compounds that need careful processing to make it safe, a skill passed through generations of experience. Not far away, smoke curls lazily from a long brick oven. Inside, sailors' biscuits are baking. The cook hands you one fresh from the heat. It is astonishingly hard. He laughs at your expression. Ship's biscuits, often called hardtack, were designed for survival rather than comfort. Baked until nearly all moisture disappeared, they could last for months on long voyages if kept dry, making them one of the most common foods carried aboard sailing ships. A nearby child tries dipping one into stew until it finally softens enough to bite. Clearly, this trick has been learned through practice. As the day grows warmer, you reach the cooper's yard again. Today, the craftsmen are testing finished barrels by filling them completely with water. Tiny leaks reveal themselves immediately. A successful barrel might travel across entire oceans carrying wine, flour, salted meat, or fresh water, but only if every wooden stave fit together with remarkable precision. The master cooper proudly explains that no nails hold the barrel together. Only carefully shaped wood and iron hoops under tension. You run your fingers across the smooth curve and marvel that something so simple can be so clever. Further down the lane, a tailor is repairing heavy coats despite the tropical heat. You ask why anyone would need such thick clothing here. He points toward a merchant vessel preparing for a voyage north. Sea travel often crossed multiple climates in a single journey. A sailor leaving warm Caribbean waters could eventually face cold Atlantic winds, making layered clothing an unexpected necessity. By afternoon, the wind freshens from the east. The harbor changes almost instantly. Canvas awnings ripple. Laundry snaps in the breeze. Dozens of ships pivot gently around their anchors until they all face nearly the same direction. An anchored sailing vessel naturally swings with changing wind and current, creating graceful patterns that experienced mariners could read almost like weather vanes. You sit at the edge of the pier watching this slow dance. Nothing appears hurried. Even the gulls seem content to drift overhead without purpose. Nearby, an elderly rope maker twists long strands of hemp using little more than wooden hooks and practiced movements. Producing strong rope required patience and teamwork. The longest ropes were often made in dedicated rope walks, straight paths stretching hundreds of feet where fibers could be twisted together evenly without tangling. The old craftsman pauses only once. He rubs tar into the finished line to protect it from moisture and decay. The smell lingers in the warm air. By sunset, the marketplace has quieted again. A traveling musician arrives carrying an instrument unlike any you've seen before. Its body is carved from a single piece of wood, polished smooth by years of use. No one asks where it came from. In a port like this, almost every object has crossed an ocean. A chair may have been built in one kingdom, repaired in another, sold in a third, and finally carried here aboard a ship whose captain spoke an entirely different language. The forgotten harbor is more than a meeting place. It is a crossroads where countless cultures quietly borrow from one another until no one can quite remember where an idea first began. As darkness settles over the bay once more, lanterns glow beneath balconies draped with drying nets. The tide slips silently between the piers. Somewhere offshore, an unseen whale exhales with a deep, distant breath. And for a brief moment, the entire port seems to pause and listen. not out of fear, but out of respect for the vast ocean that brought every person here, and that may one day carry every one of them away again. Here's the next 6-minute section, continuing the same cozy atmospheric journey through the forgotten pirate port while naturally weaving another series of historical facts into the story. One evening, just after the last fishing boats have returned, a thick blanket of fog begins to drift across the harbor. It arrives so quietly that no one notices at first. The lighthouse fades. The nearest ship disappears. Even the sound of waves seems softer, wrapped in white mist. You stand at the end of the dock and can barely see your own hands. For sailors, fog was one of the sea's oldest tricks. Without modern instruments, even experienced captains could lose their bearings in minutes, relying on bells, shouted signals, or the careful counting of strokes from the ship's lead line to judge their position. A low bell rings somewhere ahead. Then another answers from farther away. The sound echoes strangely through the mist. Hidden among the warehouses, a boy explains that every anchored vessel has agreed on a different pattern of signals to avoid collisions during poor visibility. Simple sounds become lifelines when eyes can no longer help. As the fog lingers into the night, you follow a narrow lane that leads to the edge of town. There, half buried beneath vines, stands the oldest building you have seen yet. Its walls are built from coral blocks rather than timber. Running your hand across the rough surface, you can still feel tiny fossil shapes pressed into the stone. Across many islands, coral limestone became a common building material because it was readily available and resisted insects better than wood, though carving it demanded great patience. An elderly mason kneels nearby repairing a cracked corner. He uses crushed shell mixed with lime to create mortar, explaining that even walls must be fed from the sea. You continue inland until you reach a small courtyard where several women sit weaving broad hats from dried palm leaves. Their fingers never seem to stop moving. Lightweight woven hats protected workers from relentless tropical sun and could often be made from materials gathered only a short walk from home. One finished hat passes through 5 different hands before being set aside. Every tiny adjustment improves its shape. Nothing is rushed. By midnight, the fog begins to lift. Stars slowly return overhead, one by one, until the sky looks like a blanket stitched with silver thread. A navigator standing beside the pier notices your curiosity and points toward a bright constellation rising above the eastern horizon. Before accurate clocks made precise longitude possible, sailors often estimated their position through celestial observations, combining the stars with dead reckoning and years of hard-earned experience. He folds away his small brass instrument with surprising care. It has crossed the ocean more times than he can remember. The next morning, excitement spreads quietly through the marketplace. Not because treasure has arrived, because a ship is carrying citrus fruit. Bright yellow lemons and green limes fill woven baskets near the docks. The fruit disappears almost immediately. Although sailors did not fully understand the science at first, experience gradually taught many crews that fresh citrus helped prevent the terrible illness we now know as scurvy, making these simple fruits unusually valuable during long voyages. Nearby, children race each other while balancing empty buckets on their heads. The game makes everyone laugh. Yet the adults smile for another reason. Carrying water this way builds the balance and posture useful for daily chores around the settlement. Even play becomes practice. You wander toward a narrow workshop where tiny wooden boxes cover every shelf. Opening one reveals polished brass buttons. Another contains sewing needles. A third is packed with carefully folded spectacles wrapped in cloth. Ports were magnets for specialized craftsmen who repaired the countless little objects that ships constantly broke, proving that even the smallest tools could support an enormous trading network. In the afternoon, the tide falls farther than usual. The harbor floor begins to appear. Dark rocks rise from beneath the water. Old posts from forgotten piers stick upward like crooked teeth. Several children hurry across the wet sand collecting dropped nails, bits of rope, and lost coins before the sea returns. Low tide often revealed objects hidden for months, turning ordinary beaches into unexpected treasure hunts. An old fisherman notices one boy proudly holding a bent copper coin. He chuckles. The coin itself is nearly worthless, but he advises the child never to ignore small discoveries. Many remarkable archaeological finds have begun with someone noticing a single unusual object where no one expected it to be. As evening arrives once more, the harbor slowly fills again. Water climbs the pilings. Boats rise with it. The scattered rocks vanish beneath gentle waves as if they had never existed. Watching the transformation, you realize the forgotten pirate port has always lived between two worlds: land and sea, fact and legend, memory and silence. Twice each day the tide hides part of its story. And twice each day, if someone is patient enough to watch, it quietly gives a little of that story back. I like the direction this is taking. For the next segment, I'd begin gently hinting at why the port was eventually abandoned, while still maintaining the relaxing pace and weaving historical facts into the narrative. As the seasons drift by, almost unnoticed, subtle changes begin to appear around the forgotten harbor. At first, hardly anyone pays attention. A sandbar that once sat well offshore now seems a little closer to the entrance. A fishing boat runs aground where it never had before. The lighthouse keeper adds a small note to his weather journal, then closes the book without another word. Coastlines are far less permanent than they appear. Waves, tides, storms, and shifting currents constantly reshape beaches and shallow waters, sometimes altering harbors over the course of only a few decades. You walk down to the western pier and notice several men lowering a weighted rope into the water. Every few steps they call out a number. Then another. Then another. They are taking soundings. Long before sonar existed, sailors measured water depth with a lead weight attached to a marked line. The simple technique allowed captains to map channels and avoid dangerous shoals hidden beneath the surface. One of the older sailors frowns as he coils the rope. The water is shallower than it was last year. No one panics, but everyone remembers. Later that afternoon, you meet a shipwright replacing part of a vessel's keel. He explains that wooden ships were never expected to last forever. Even the finest built hulls slowly weakened from constant exposure to saltwater, changing temperatures, and hungry marine organisms. Regular repairs were simply accepted as part of life at sea. Nearby, several workers carefully burn the old damaged timber instead of throwing it away. Dry hardwood still has value. Nothing useful is wasted here. The smell of smoke drifts through town, mixing with fresh bread and sea air until the entire harbor carries a familiar scent known only to its residents. You continue toward the customs house. The building itself is modest, with peeling paint and crooked shutters. Inside, a clerk patiently records cargo arriving from distant shores. Not every ship entering the harbor belongs to pirates. In fact, many ports balanced legal commerce with unofficial trade, creating complicated economies where honest merchants and smugglers might anchor side by side without speaking of one another's business. The clerk dips his quill into ink, blows gently across the page, then reaches for a pinch of fine sand. Before blotting paper became common, writers often sprinkled dry sand over fresh ink to absorb excess moisture and prevent smearing. You watch with quiet fascination. Such a small trick, yet one that saves countless pages. Toward evening, clouds gather from the southeast. The air becomes strangely still. Birds that usually circle above the docks disappear inland. Old fishermen glance toward the horizon without saying anything. Generations of observation taught coastal communities to recognize subtle warning signs before severe weather. Changes in bird behavior, unusual humidity, or sudden calm often hinted that a powerful storm might be approaching. By nightfall, the first heavy gusts arrive. Lantern flames tremble. Loose shutters begin to bang against stone walls. Every family seems to know exactly what to do. Boats are tied with extra lines. Market awnings come down. Barrels are rolled into sheltered storage. Preparation happens almost automatically, practiced through years of experience. The storm itself passes before dawn. When sunlight finally returns, the harbor looks surprisingly peaceful. Only a few broken branches litter the streets. But something important has changed. The narrow channel leading into the bay now bends slightly farther north. The current has carved a new path. The old one is already beginning to fill with sand. Children splash through puddles, unaware of what has happened. Merchants reopen their shops. The baker needs another batch of dough. Life goes on. Yet the harbor has received a quiet reminder that the sea is the true architect of every port. Humans may build docks. They may raise warehouses. They may draw careful maps and hammer sturdy pilings into the seabed. But the ocean follows no blueprint except its own. And if it decides to redraw the shoreline, every captain, merchant, pirate, fisherman, and king must eventually accept the new design. You pause at the edge of the water as tiny waves lap against your boots. The forgotten port still bustles behind you. Children laugh. Hammers ring. Sails flutter in the breeze. It feels as though it could last forever. Perhaps that is exactly what the people living here believed. History has a gentle way of proving otherwise. Here's the next 6-minute segment, continuing the slow, sleepy narrative and gradually bringing the story closer to the harbor's quiet disappearance. Years seem to pass as gently as the tides. The faces around the harbor slowly change. The baker's son now runs the ovens. The young girl who once mended fishing nets has become the person teaching children how to tie the same careful knots. The old navigator who loved the stars walks a little more slowly each evening, but he still climbs the hill to watch the sunset. The port itself seems unchanged, yet nothing stays exactly the same. One crisp morning, a ship arrives carrying something unusual. Not silver, not silk, not spices, books. Heavy wooden crates filled with leather-bound volumes are carefully unloaded onto the dock. In an age when many people owned only a handful of possessions, books were precious cargo. A single volume could travel thousands of miles by sea, passing through many hands before reaching its next reader. The schoolmaster eagerly carries them uphill. Children gather around as he opens one, revealing hand-colored maps of distant coastlines. Some of the islands are familiar. Others are drawn in places where no land exists at all. Early maps often mixed careful observation with rumor, sailors' tales, and educated guesses. Cartographers sometimes copied mistakes from older charts, allowing imaginary islands to survive on paper for generations. One boy points excitedly to a tiny, in the middle of the ocean. The teacher smiles but quietly shakes his head. No captain has ever found that one. By noon, you wander toward the eastern cliffs, where dozens of seabirds nest among the rocks. They wheel overhead in graceful circles before diving toward the water. The fishermen below pay close attention. Long before weather forecasts, many sailors watched birds to locate schools of fish or to judge how close land might be. Certain species rarely strayed far from shore, making them natural guides across open water. At the base of the cliff, several women gather smooth white shells. They are not collecting souvenirs. The shells will be crushed into powder and mixed with lime for building repairs, continuing a practice that has sustained the town for decades. Nothing useful is ignored. Even broken things begin new lives. Back in the marketplace, a clockmaker from Europe has opened a tiny workshop. His shelves are filled with gears no larger than peas. He spends hours polishing brass wheels until they shine like tiny suns. Mechanical clocks fascinated many coastal towns, but salt air was an unforgiving enemy. Moisture crept into delicate mechanisms, causing rust and forcing constant maintenance. The clockmaker sighs every time the sea breeze enters through the window. Still, he keeps working. In the afternoon, a messenger arrives with letters from another colony hundreds of miles away. The entire journey has taken nearly 7 weeks. Before steamships and telegraphs, communication across oceans depended entirely on the speed of sailing vessels and favorable winds. News often arrived long after the events themselves had already changed. A merchant opens one letter and quietly laughs. The prices listed inside are already out of date. Trade moved faster than information. As evening falls, you stroll beyond the last houses and discover an abandoned orchard. The trees are still alive, but no one harvests their fruit anymore. Wild parrots feast where farmers once worked. Grass grows between cracked stone walls. It occurs to you that places are often forgotten long before they are empty. Sometimes they fade one neglected corner at a time. A fence is left unrepaired. A roof collapses. A path disappears beneath weeds. Then another, and another. Returning toward town, you notice that one of the oldest warehouses has been dismantled. Its beams are being reused to repair nearby homes. Recycling building materials was common in isolated settlements where fresh timber could be scarce or expensive. A single sturdy beam might serve 3 or 4 different buildings over the course of a century. The warehouse itself quietly vanishes. By nightfall, only a patch of bare earth remains. No ceremony marks its passing. No plaque remembers it. The moon rises over the harbor, casting silver light across calm water. Ships rock gently at anchor just as they always have. The lighthouse glows steadily. The tavern hums with quiet conversation. Everything feels familiar. And yet, if you look closely, you can sense the first faint threads of unraveling. Not through disaster, not through battle, but through time itself. Like an old rope left in the salt air, strong enough to hold today, yet slowly fraying where almost no one thinks to look. Here's the next 6-minute chapter, gently carrying the story toward its final act while preserving the calm, dreamy atmosphere and continuing to weave historical facts naturally into the narrative. One quiet autumn morning, a stranger arrives with nothing more than a walking stick and a leather notebook. No one knows exactly where he came from. Some say he sailed from the north. Others insist he crossed half the world. The children simply call him the mapmaker. Unlike the merchants, he buys nothing. Unlike the pirates, he sells nothing. Instead, he spends his days wandering through the streets, stopping every few steps to sketch buildings, measure distances, and write tiny notes in impossibly neat handwriting. Surveyors and mapmakers often traveled extensively, creating detailed records that later became priceless historical documents. In many cases, their drawings are the only surviving images of settlements that have long since disappeared. You follow him as he reaches the old stone well in the center of town. He carefully counts the steps from the well to the nearest warehouse, then to the bakery, then to the harbor. When asked why, he smiles and replies that memories fade faster than measurements. By midday, he has climbed the hill overlooking the bay. From there, he sketches every pier, every chimney, every winding lane. He even notes the location of a crooked palm tree that leans toward the sea. Trees often appeared on old nautical charts because they served as recognizable landmarks for incoming sailors, especially in places where formal beacons were few. The mapmaker seems determined to preserve every detail. As afternoon arrives, you wander into the sail loft once more. The room feels quieter than it used to. Only 2 workers remain where 6 once stitched enormous sheets of canvas. One explains that fewer ships have been visiting each season. Trade routes are changing. New ports are growing elsewhere. Throughout history, Commercial centers frequently rose and fell as political alliances shifted, natural harbors silted up, or larger cities attracted merchants with better facilities and stronger protection. No announcement declares the decline. People simply begin choosing different destinations. At the docks, you notice something similar. The busiest wharf now has empty spaces between the moored vessels. Children use them as places to fish. An elderly captain remembers when ships were tied so closely together that one could walk from deck to deck without touching the pier. Today, he says, the water seems wider. Toward evening, the blacksmith extinguishes one of his furnaces. Coal has become expensive. There is no need to keep both fires burning anymore. His apprentice spends more time repairing farming tools than forging anchor chains. The work is honest, but it tells a story. Communities often adapt gradually to economic change, shifting toward whatever skills remain useful as old industries fade away. That night, a cool wind blows through the harbor. The tavern fills with familiar faces. Stories are exchanged. Songs are sung. Yet every conversation seems to include someone who has recently left. A cousin who moved to a larger island. A nephew who found work in a growing city. A ship captain who never returned after discovering a busier route. Population decline rarely happens all at once. It often arrives family by family, voyage by voyage, until one day everyone notices the empty chairs. The next morning, you visit the cemetery beneath the fig trees. Fresh flowers rest on several graves. At the far end stands a weathered stone you have somehow overlooked before. Its inscription has almost vanished. Only a few words remain. Asterisk, may the sea remember what the world forgets. Asterisk. Whether those words were truly carved there or whether your tired imagination supplied them hardly seems to matter. The sentiment feels perfectly suited to this place. For the ocean has witnessed every arrival, every farewell, every celebration, every storm. It has carried strangers here and carried residents away again. The waves have listened to thousands of voices that no history book would ever record. As sunset paints the sky with soft shades of amber and violet, the mapmaker closes his notebook for the final time. He gazes across the harbor in silence. Then he slips the pencil behind his ear, rolls up his drawings, and boards the next outbound ship. He does not know it. No one here knows it. But generations from now, when the buildings have collapsed, the docks have rotted away, and vines have swallowed the last stone walls, his careful sketches may become the only reason anyone remembers this place at all. The forgotten pirate port is beginning to disappear. Not beneath the sea, not beneath fire, but beneath the far quieter tide of passing years. And history, as it so often does, is already looking somewhere else. Here's the continuation, carrying the story into its final melancholy phase while keeping the tone gentle, immersive, and perfect for a sleep-focused narration. When you wake the next morning, the harbor feels quieter than ever before. Not empty, just spacious. The kind of spaciousness that only appears when familiar sounds have slowly disappeared one by one. The cooper's hammer no longer echoes from his workshop. The clockmaker's window is shuttered. Even the old storyteller's favorite barrel sits alone in the marketplace, collecting a thin layer of dust. You stroll toward the docks and find a ship preparing to leave. Its crew loads the last of its barrels with practiced efficiency, checking every rope and every knot. The captain pauses before boarding and takes one long look at the town. Then he removes a folded piece of paper from his pocket. A chart. With careful movements, he draws a tiny mark through the name of the harbor. Routes changed constantly in the age of sail. Captains updated their personal charts whenever they found faster passages, safer anchorages, or ports that had become too shallow or too quiet to justify the stop. No one watching the captain realizes what that small stroke of ink will mean. But you do. One fewer ship this season. perhaps 3 fewer next year. Then 10. Trade does not vanish with a bang. It drifts away with the current. Near the bakery, the ovens still burn, though only one chimney sends smoke into the sky. The baker kneads dough in silence. He no longer makes hundreds of loaves each morning, only enough for the people who remain. For centuries, many declining ports adapted in exactly this way. Businesses shrank little by little, matching the needs of a shrinking population rather than closing overnight. Outside, weeds have begun pushing between the cracks in the stone road. No one seems concerned. A child plucks a wildflower growing beside the old customs house and tucks it behind her ear. Nature is patient. It never hurries. Every abandoned path, every neglected wall, every forgotten garden eventually belongs to the plants again. You wander uphill to the lookout tower where the watchman still scans the horizon through his brass spyglass. He has spent decades counting sails. Today, he lowers the instrument with a small sigh. Only 2 ships. He remembers mornings when 20 waited offshore for permission to enter the bay. Human memory has a curious habit of measuring change by comparison rather than by numbers. The empty water speaks louder than any ledger. Down below, the carpenter's yard has become strangely still. Half-finished beams rest beneath a shelter where no one is working. Without enough ships arriving, there is less need for repairs. Without repairs, fewer carpenters stay. Without carpenters, fewer apprentices arrive to learn the trade. Economies often depend upon invisible chains of connected professions, where the decline of one occupation quietly affects many others. By afternoon, a group of families gathers near the eastern beach. Their belongings fit into only a handful of carts. Chickens cluck from woven baskets. Bundles of clothing are tied with rope. A grandmother pauses to touch the gatepost before climbing aboard. Migration has shaped coastal history for thousands of years. Entire communities sometimes relocated in search of deeper harbors, richer farmland, safer politics, or better opportunities, leaving behind only scattered foundations and fading memories. No speeches are made. The oxen begin walking. The wheels roll slowly across the packed earth. The children wave until the houses disappear behind a grove of palms. As evening settles over the bay, you visit the lighthouse one final time. The keeper lights the lamp with the same careful routine he has followed for years. Trim the wick. Fill the oil. Polish the glass. Watch the flame. Lighthouses demanded constant human attention long before electricity arrived. Their reliability depended entirely on the discipline of the people who tended them through every season and every storm. The old keeper watches the beams sweep across the water. Then he quietly admits something he has never said aloud. Some nights, no ships answer its call. Still, he keeps the light burning. Not because someone is certain to arrive, but because someone might. Darkness spreads gently across the forgotten port. The tavern grows silent. The market stands empty. The ropes tied to unused piers sway softly with the tide, tapping against weathered posts in a slow, familiar rhythm. You sit at the water's edge and listen. It sounds almost like a clock. Not one that counts minutes or hours, but one that measures something far older. The gradual passing of places. The slow fading of names. The quiet moment when a harbor ceases to be a destination and becomes a memory. And somewhere out beyond the moonlit waves, ships continue sailing past without ever realizing what they have missed. Here's the next segment, moving the story into its final reflective chapter. The pace remains slow and calming, with the facts woven naturally into the narrative rather than presented as a list. Many years pass. So many, in fact, that the children who once chased crabs along the shoreline now have grandchildren of their own. The forgotten pirate port still exists, but only just. Its busiest street has become its quietest. Grass grows where wagon wheels once carved deep tracks into the earth. The marketplace, once filled with shouting merchants and the smell of fresh bread, now welcomes more lizards than customers. You walk slowly through the familiar lanes, noticing details that once would have escaped your attention. The wooden signs above abandoned shops have faded until their letters can barely be read. Paint rarely survives long in coastal climates. Salt carried by sea breezes, strong sunlight, and humid air gradually strip color from exposed wood, forcing constant maintenance that smaller communities often cannot afford. A loose shutter bangs softly against an empty window. Then another. It almost sounds like someone applauding the silence. Near the old docks, a cluster of mangrove trees has begun growing where boats once unloaded barrels. Mangroves are remarkable survivors. Their tangled roots trap mud and sediment, slowly creating new ground while also protecting coastlines from erosion. Given enough time, they can completely transform the shape of a shoreline. Small fish dart between the roots. Tiny crabs disappear into the wet sand. Nature is rebuilding the harbor according to its own plans. You kneel beside one of the abandoned piers. The wood is soft beneath your fingertips. Shipworms, despite their name, are not worms at all but marine mollusks that tunnel through submerged timber. Across history, they have destroyed countless docks, hulls, and seawalls, forcing coastal communities into an endless cycle of repairs. The sea has been quietly eating this pier for decades. No one stopped it. No one could. Farther inland, you discover the schoolhouse still standing. Inside, dust covers every desk. A cracked slate remains on the wall. Someone has left behind a simple arithmetic lesson, the numbers frozen in time as though class had ended only yesterday. Paper often vanished quickly in damp climates, but writing carved into slate or scratched into stone could survive surprisingly long after books and records had crumbled away. Outside, the old well still holds water. You lower the bucket. The rope creaks exactly as it always has. Fresh groundwater often outlasted the communities that first dug for it, becoming one of the few resources later travelers could still rely upon when abandoned settlements faded into ruin. As the afternoon grows cooler, you climb once more to the lookout tower. Only half of it remains. The upper platform collapsed years ago. Young trees now grow through the broken staircase. From the top you can see the entire bay. Without the warehouses and crowded masts, it seems much larger than you remember. Distance has a way of expanding when familiar landmarks disappear. You sit there until evening. A flock of pelicans glides across the water in perfect formation. For centuries, fishermen often watched pelicans to locate schools of fish, since the birds' dramatic dives usually revealed where prey gathered beneath the surface. The birds plunge one after another. Splash, splash, splash. The sound echoes across the quiet harbor. No cannons, no market bells. Only nature continuing its patient routine. Just before sunset, you notice movement near the edge of the beach. An elderly man is carefully burying a glass bottle beneath the sand. Inside is a tightly rolled piece of paper. He smiles when he catches you watching. Bottle messages have been carried by ocean currents for centuries. While many never reached another shore, a surprising number have been recovered hundreds or even thousands of miles from where they first entered the sea, providing everything from scientific observations to desperate pleas for help. You never ask what his message says. Some mysteries are kinder when left unopened. As darkness falls, fireflies begin blinking among the abandoned gardens. The old stone walls cast long shadows across the grass. The lighthouse no longer shines. Its lamp has finally gone dark. Yet strangely, the harbor does not feel dead. It feels as though it is sleeping, waiting beneath vines, drifting sand, and tangled roots for someone centuries from now to brush away the soil, uncover a forgotten coin, trace the outline of an old foundation, and quietly ask the same question you once did. Who lived here? And why did they leave? The waves continue their gentle answer, repeating it over and over against the shore. Patiently, endlessly, so softly that only those willing to linger can hear it at all. Here's the next segment, setting up the closing arc of the documentary. It gently transitions from the last inhabitants to the rediscovery of the lost harbor centuries later, while maintaining the same sleepy, atmospheric storytelling style. By the time another generation has come and gone, hardly anyone calls this place a pirate port anymore. The word slips quietly from conversation. A sailor in a distant tavern might vaguely remember hearing about a sheltered bay somewhere beyond the reefs. A merchant may find the name scribbled in the margin of an old ledger. But few people can agree on exactly where it once stood. Memory, like the tide, has begun to recede. One spring morning, the last permanent family packs its belongings onto a small coastal sloop. There are no crowds to wave goodbye, no speeches from officials, only neighbors helping neighbors lift chests onto the deck. A wooden cradle, 3 clay pots, a sewing basket, a stack of blankets folded so neatly they could almost be mistaken for sails. When historians study abandoned settlements, they often discover that people carried away nearly everything of value. The objects archaeologists find centuries later are usually the things that were broken, buried, too heavy to transport, or simply forgotten in haste. The boat slips away with the morning tide. No one looks back for very long. Sometimes it is easier to remember a place by facing forward. For a while, fishermen still stop here. They repair nets on the empty pier. They refill their water barrels at the old well. Then they leave before sunset. A few seasons later, even those visits become rare. Without constant footsteps, nature moves in. The paths disappear first. Tall grasses lean across them until they become impossible to distinguish from the surrounding fields. Then vines creep over walls. Seeds carried by birds settle into cracks between stones. Given enough time, tree roots can split masonry apart with astonishing force, slowly prying open buildings that once seemed permanent. You wander through streets that no longer look like streets. The bakery has become a grove. The marketplace has become a meadow. The tavern roof collapsed years ago, allowing sunlight to reach the floor where wildflowers now bloom each spring. Only the smell of salt remains unchanged. Decades pass. Then centuries. Maps are copied by hand so many times that mistakes begin to multiply. One cartographer accidentally places the old harbor 10 miles too far east. Another omits it entirely because his source material is damaged. A third mistakes its faded symbol for a decorative flourish and quietly leaves it out. Before the age of modern printing, copying errors could spread surprisingly quickly, causing locations, coastlines, and even entire islands to shift position from one mapmaker to the next. Eventually, the forgotten port survives only in a handful of journals gathering dust on distant library shelves. One mentions a convenient anchorage behind the black cliffs. Another describes excellent bread sold beside the western dock. A third complains that mosquitoes were unbearable during the rainy season. Tiny details, small memories, scattered clues. Far out at sea, passing captains notice nothing unusual. Their ships sail over waters where anchors once splashed down every morning. Their wakes ripple across submerged pilings hidden beneath layers of sand. Below the surface, fish weave between old timbers blackened by age. Coral slowly coats abandoned stones. The ocean has become both guardian and archivist. It does not erase the harbor. It simply stores it differently. One afternoon, nearly 200 years after the last family departed, a violent storm tears through the coastline. The wind uproots ancient trees. Heavy rain cuts fresh channels through the hillside. When the skies finally clear, part of the earth has washed away. For the first time in generations, a corner of an old stone foundation is visible again. A shepherd notices it while searching for a missing goat. He brushes away loose soil with his boot, then kneels, then calls for others. At first they believe it is only an ordinary ruin, but beneath the dirt lies a carefully shaped floor of fitted stones. Nearby, someone uncovers a rusted hinge. Another finds fragments of blue glass. Then comes a copper button. Then a clay pipe. Then the edge of a silver coin bearing the worn profile of a king who has been dead for centuries. Archaeology often begins exactly this way. Not with dramatic treasure hunts, but with curious people paying attention to something small and asking one simple question. How did this get here? As the sun begins to set, the shepherd slips the coin into his pocket and walks home. He has no idea that the quiet discovery at his feet may soon awaken an entire chapter of history that the world believed had vanished forever. And beneath the cooling evening breeze, hidden just below the grass, the old pirate port waits patiently. It has been waiting all along. I'd end the documentary by bringing the listener full circle, back to the quiet harbor where the journey began, while emphasizing that the greatest mystery wasn't the pirates or the treasure, but the ordinary people whose lives slipped from memory. Here's a closing 6-minute segment in the same relaxing style. Word of the shepherd's discovery spreads slowly. Not in days, not even in weeks, but over the course of many quiet years. A professor hears about an old silver coin found near the coast. A museum curator receives a sketch of a weathered foundation. A local fisherman mentions strange wooden posts that become visible only during the lowest tides. Piece by piece, curiosity begins to gather. Soon, small teams arrive carrying notebooks instead of swords. They bring measuring tapes instead of muskets. Their most valuable tools are brushes, patience, and an endless willingness to kneel in the dirt. Modern archaeology is often a slow conversation with the past. Excavations may uncover only a few inches of soil each day, because rushing can destroy clues that have survived for centuries. You watch as one researcher carefully uncovers the corner of an old brick oven. Its shape is familiar. You remember the smell of fresh bread drifting across the harbor at sunrise. Nearby, another brush reveals rows of tiny iron nails. The wood they once held together has long since disappeared. Organic materials such as timber, cloth, and leather often decay much faster than stone or metal, leaving behind only stains in the earth or scattered fragments for archaeologists to interpret. Another trench reveals broken pottery. Not fine china. Not royal tableware. Just everyday bowls chipped from years of use. A cracked mug. Half a cooking pot. The worn handle of a spoon. It is these ordinary objects that excite the researchers most. Treasure can tell you who was wealthy, but a kitchen tells you how people actually lived. Days become months. Months become seasons. The outlines of forgotten streets slowly emerge beneath the soil. There is the market square. There is the cooper's yard. There is the path that once led to the old well. Without ever realizing it, you have returned to places you walked so many chapters ago. The harbor is coming back to life. Not with people, but with memory. One afternoon, an archaeologist uncovers something unexpected. A smooth stone worn into a shallow groove. At first no one understands its purpose. Then an elderly local smiles. My grandfather told me fishermen sharpened hooks there. No one can prove his story. Yet oral traditions sometimes preserve surprising fragments of truth across many generations, even after written records have vanished. As the excavation continues, children from nearby villages visit the site. They ask questions. They peer into carefully marked trenches. They imagine ships where only grass now grows. History survives best when someone becomes curious enough to ask about it. The researchers eventually publish maps showing the full outline of the settlement. The forgotten pirate port was smaller than legends claimed. Its treasure vaults never existed. Its hidden tunnels were probably invented long after it disappeared. Many of the dramatic stories passed down through the centuries simply melt away under careful study. And somehow the truth is even more interesting. Because beneath every exciting tale of pirates and privateers was a real community. Real bakers rising before dawn. Real children chasing chickens through muddy streets. Real carpenters shaping curved beams by hand. Real lighthouse keepers trimming lamps through lonely nights. Real teachers opening crates of books. Real families deciding, one by one, that it was time to leave. As twilight settles over the excavation, the workers pack away their tools. The trenches fall quiet. Only the breeze continues to move through the grass. You take one final walk to the edge of the bay. The sea looks almost exactly as it did centuries ago. Waves roll gently onto the shore. Pelicans glide low across the water. The evening sky fills with stars that guided countless sailors long before satellites ever existed. It becomes clear that the port was never truly forgotten. It simply changed guardians. First it belonged to the people who lived there, then to the ocean, then to the earth. And now, for a little while, it belongs to anyone willing to listen to its story. As the tide rises once more, it creeps softly over the oldest stones. The water covers them inch by inch, not to hide them, but almost as if tucking them in for another peaceful night's sleep. And perhaps that is the gentlest ending imaginable for a harbor that spent so many years waiting to be remembered. So if you ever find yourself standing beside a quiet stretch of coastline where nothing seems to happen, pause for just a moment before you walk on. Beneath your feet, under layers of sand and roots and time itself, there may be another forgotten port, another bakery, another marketplace, another lighthouse, another 1,000 ordinary lives, all waiting patiently for someone to wonder where they went. And with that thought, the waves continue their endless rhythm, the stars keep their silent watch, and the old pirate harbor drifts once more into the calm embrace of the night. I know the previous section felt like a natural ending, but for a long-form sleep video, here's a gentle epilogue that slowly fades out and leaves the listener with one last peaceful image. Long after the archaeologists have packed away their brushes, long after the notebooks have been closed, long after the visitors have returned home, the old harbor remains exactly where it has always been. The wind still arrives from the sea each morning. The tide still rises without needing to be invited. The gulls still argue over scraps of fish as though nothing in the world has ever changed. If you were to visit today, you might walk straight across the site without realizing it. A grassy hill, a few scattered stones, perhaps the outline of an old foundation if the afternoon sun strikes it at just the right angle. Many archaeological sites remain almost invisible to casual visitors. Without signs or excavation, centuries of soil and vegetation can hide entire neighborhoods beneath what appears to be an ordinary field. You kneel beside one weathered rock. Tiny patches of pale green lichen spread across its surface. Lichens grow so slowly that some colonies may survive for decades or even centuries, quietly recording the passage of time on exposed stone while generations of people come and go. The silence feels familiar now. It is not an empty silence. It is full. Full of footsteps no longer heard. Full of laughter carried away by old storms. Full of voices that once echoed between warehouses and taverns before blending into the sound of the surf. Somewhere beneath the earth rests the cooper's workshop, the bakery, the sail loft, the little classroom where children traced letters onto slate, the lookout tower where tired eyes searched the horizon for friendly sails, the lighthouse whose patient keeper lit the lamp even on nights when no ships came. None of them vanished all at once. They simply became part of the landscape. History often disappears gradually rather than dramatically. Roofs collapse, walls weather, foundations sink, and over many generations the boundary between human construction and the natural world becomes increasingly difficult to recognize. A cool evening breeze moves through the grass. For a brief moment, the stems sway in neat rows. They almost resemble waves. You smile at the thought. Perhaps the harbor never truly stopped being the sea. Perhaps it merely exchanged wooden ships for fields of green. As darkness approaches, the first stars begin to appear overhead. You recognize a few of them. The same constellations the old navigator once pointed toward. The same lights that guided merchants, fishermen, explorers, and pirates across black water long before electric beacons lined the coast. Astronomers know that many of the brightest stars visible to the naked eye are hundreds of light years away, meaning their light began its journey long before the forgotten harbor faded from memory. In a strange way, the night sky is always showing U.S. history. The final glow of sunset slips beneath the horizon. Crickets replace the cries of seabirds. The air cools. A single wave folds gently onto the shore. Then another. Then another. You close your eyes and imagine the harbor as it once was. Lanterns glowing along the docks. Fresh bread cooling on wooden shelves. Children racing through crooked streets. Ship bells ringing softly in the morning mist. Sails rocking against a sky full of stars. For one quiet moment, the town lives again. Not because it has been rebuilt, but because someone remembered it. And perhaps that is the greatest treasure any forgotten place could hope to leave behind. The sea keeps its rhythm. The stars continue their slow journey overhead. The grass whispers in the wind. And somewhere beneath the sleeping earth, the pirate port time forgot rests peacefully, holding its stories until the next curious traveler comes along and pauses long enough to listen. Before we continue, one thing to note: the script has already reached a complete narrative arc, from arriving at the forgotten pirate port, through its daily life and decline, to its rediscovery and epilogue. Continuing with brand new material works best if it shifts into a reflective one last walk that reinforces the relaxing mood rather than trying to extend the main plot. Imagine, just for a moment, that you never left. That after all these years, you found a quiet bench overlooking the bay and decided to stay until the stars came out. The air is cooler now. The breeze carries the faint scent of salt and distant pine, just as it did on the morning you first arrived. Nothing asks for your attention. Nothing needs to be solved. The harbor has long since surrendered its secrets. All that remains is the gentle rhythm of the sea. If you listen carefully, you can almost hear the old routines returning. A cooper tapping the side of a newly finished barrel. The baker sliding another loaf into a brick oven. A child laughing as a stubborn goat escapes down the marketplace. A lighthouse keeper trimming a wick before sunset. Historians sometimes describe this as the soundscape of the past. Even when buildings disappear, researchers can often reconstruct daily life by studying tools, workshops, written accounts, and the arrangement of streets, imagining the ordinary noises that once filled forgotten places. The moon climbs higher. Its reflection stretches across the water in a silver ribbon. For centuries, sailors used moonlight to continue working after dark when conditions allowed. A bright full moon could illuminate a harbor so well that loading cargo became possible without wasting precious lamp oil. Some captains even planned departures around the lunar cycle. You notice that the tide has begun to rise again. It reaches the old stones one careful inch at a time. Then another. Then another. The moon's gravity is the primary force behind Earth's ocean tides, creating the familiar rise and fall that coastal communities have relied upon for navigation, fishing, and trade throughout recorded history. The waves cover the remnants of the western pier. Not violently, almost tenderly. As though greeting an old friend, a tiny crab emerges from between the rocks. It pauses, raises one claw, then disappears into the darkness. Life has a remarkable way of returning to abandoned places. Scientists have observed ecosystems reclaiming deserted villages, military forts, and forgotten industrial sites, with plants and animals gradually transforming human landscapes into thriving habitats once more. You close your eyes. The sounds become simpler. Wind, water, an occasional seabird, the distant rustle of reeds. Perhaps this is what the first sailors heard before the harbor was ever built. Perhaps it is what future generations will hear long after today's cities have changed beyond recognition. Empires rise. Trade routes shift. Ports appear. Ports vanish. Yet the coastline keeps breathing in and out with every tide, patient enough to outlast them all. Somewhere beneath the grass lies a bent iron nail from the old shipyard. Nearby rests a cracked ceramic bowl dropped by a distracted merchant hundreds of years ago. A child's marble may still be hidden beneath the roots of a fig tree. A brass button waits under a layer of sand. Each object is tiny, almost meaningless by itself, but together they tell the quiet story of thousands of ordinary lives. Archaeologists often say that the smallest discoveries can answer the biggest questions. A seed, a fishbone, or a fragment of broken pottery can reveal what people ate, traded, planted, or believed, allowing entire communities to be understood from seemingly insignificant clues. The stars continue wheeling overhead. The constellations drift westward exactly as they always have. The old navigator would recognize them. The mapmaker would sketch them. The lighthouse keeper would take comfort in them. And you simply watch them. No destination, no schedule, no hurry. Just one final peaceful evening in the pirate port time forgot. The lanterns have all gone out now. The ovens are cool. The marketplace sleeps. Even the sea seems quieter than before. If the harbor could speak, it might not tell tales of buried gold or famous captains. It might tell you about the smell of bread before sunrise, the satisfaction of a perfectly sealed barrel, the comfort of seeing home after months at sea, the joy of hearing rain fill an empty cistern, the relief of a lighthouse appearing through thick fog. Small moments, ordinary moments, the kind history rarely writes down, yet the kind that truly build a place. The tide reaches its highest point just before midnight. Then, almost imperceptibly, it begins to retreat. And with it, the harbor releases one final whisper into the darkness. Not goodbye, but simply, until the next tide. I'd close the entire documentary with one final drift into sleep chapter that slowly circles back to the opening question and fades away without introducing any new conflict. Do you remember the very first question? What happens to a place when the maps stop mentioning it? After wandering these quiet streets, watching the tides rise and fall, listening to the wind move through abandoned buildings and forgotten gardens, the answer seems different now. A place does not disappear all at once. It lingers, in the shape of an old stone hidden beneath moss, in a weathered coin resting below the roots of a tree, in a cracked piece of pottery lying quietly beneath the sand. And sometimes, it lingers only in a story told before bedtime. The sea has grown calm again. There are no ships on the horizon, no lanterns swinging from masts, no merchants unloading barrels onto the dock, only moonlight stretching across the water where countless wakes once crossed paths. You walk to the end of the oldest surviving pier. It is little more than a line of worn posts now. Each one leans at a slightly different angle. Each one bears the marks of storms that no living person remembers. Oak driven into seawater can survive for surprisingly long periods when buried in oxygen-poor mud, allowing archaeologists to identify ancient waterfronts centuries after the buildings above them have vanished. You rest your hand on the nearest post. Its surface is cool, smooth in places, rough in others. Thousands of tides have polished it more patiently than any carpenter ever could. A gentle breeze moves across the bay. Somewhere in the darkness, a night heron calls. The sound echoes once, then fades. Many coastal birds are most active during twilight and nighttime hours, when cooler temperatures and changing tides create ideal feeding conditions along the shore. You begin the slow walk back toward the hill overlooking the harbor. The grass bends softly around your feet. Fireflies blink among the reeds. The path itself is barely visible anymore, yet somehow you know exactly where it leads. Perhaps memory works like that. Even when details fade, certain journeys remain. At the top of the hill, you stop beside the old lighthouse. The lamp has been dark for centuries. Vines climb through empty windows. Small wildflowers grow between fallen stones. But if you stand quietly enough, you can almost imagine the keeper inside, checking the oil, trimming the wick, looking out to sea, waiting for a ship that never came. Lighthouse keepers often developed extraordinarily precise routines, repeating the same tasks every evening for years so that sailors could trust the consistency of the light guiding them home. Below, the harbor sleeps beneath silver moonlight. The bakery is gone. The tavern is gone. The market square exists only as faint outlines beneath the earth. Yet in your mind, they remain busy. You can still hear the baker laughing with his customers, the cooper testing a barrel with a careful tap, children chasing one another between stacks of rope, the mapmaker measuring another doorway, the old navigator lifting his eyes toward the stars. None of them knew they would become history. People rarely do. They simply wake each morning, finish their work, share meals, greet neighbors, and hope tomorrow looks much like today. Only later does someone realize those ordinary days were extraordinary all along. The first light of dawn begins to touch the eastern horizon. Colors slowly return to the world. Blue, gold, soft shades of rose. The sea reflects them all without choosing a favorite. A pelican glides low across the perfectly still water before disappearing into the growing light. For one brief instant, it seems as though time itself has paused. You take one last look at the quiet bay. Then you turn away. Behind you, the waves continue washing gently against forgotten stones. Ahead of you, the path disappears into tall grass. The pirate port time forgot remains exactly where it has always been. Patient, peaceful, neither lost nor found. Simply waiting. Waiting for another curious traveler. Waiting for another storyteller. Waiting for another quiet evening when someone asks what became of the harbor that slipped from the maps. And perhaps many years from now, another voice will answer. Not with tales of buried treasure or fearsome captains, but with memories of fresh bread at sunrise, of lanterns reflected in calm water, of families who built lives between the tides, of children who believed the harbor would last forever, and of a place that never truly vanished, because for as long as someone remembers it, the old pirate port is still there, resting peacefully beneath the stars, where the sea keeps watch, and the tide never forgets. The story has now reached a complete ending, but for a very long sleep video, you can extend the final minutes with a slow, meditative fade to black that gently repeats familiar imagery and lets the listener drift off naturally. And now, there is nothing left to do. No ships to chase. No maps to unfold. No mysteries that need solving before morning. Only the steady breathing of the ocean. You find yourself sitting once more on the weathered stones overlooking the bay. The place is so quiet that even the smallest sounds seem important. The gentle splash of water against an old piling. The whisper of wind through tall grass. The faint rustle of palm leaves somewhere behind you. Scientists often note that repetitive natural sounds, waves, wind, rainfall, and rustling leaves, follow patterns that many people find deeply calming, their rhythms changing just enough to remain soothing without demanding attention. The stars continue their patient journey overhead. Some are bright enough to cast tiny reflections across the water. Others appear only after your eyes have adjusted to the darkness. The oldest light in the night sky has traveled unimaginable distances before reaching Earth, meaning every glance upward is also a glance into the distant past. That thought somehow feels appropriate here. Everything in this harbor belongs to another time. The broken foundations, the forgotten wells, the buried anchors, the worn stones polished smooth by generations of footsteps. And yet none of it feels truly gone. It simply rests. The tide begins another slow retreat. As the water slips away, the outline of the ancient shoreline briefly returns. You can almost picture the wooden docks extending into the bay, almost hear ropes creaking against masts, almost smell fresh bread drifting from ovens that cooled hundreds of years ago. Human memory has a remarkable habit of rebuilding places from fragments. A single photograph, a familiar scent, or the sound of waves can awaken detailed mental images of worlds that no longer exist. A small owl lands silently on a nearby post. It tilts its head, listens, then flies away again without making a sound. Silence settles once more. The kind of silence that belongs only to places where time has stopped hurrying. You think about all the people who once called this harbor home. Not the famous captains, not the legendary pirates, but the rope maker who started work before sunrise, the girl learning to mend fishing nets, the teacher carefully turning the pages of a borrowed book, the lighthouse keeper polishing the glass one more time, the baker dusting flour from tired hands. Most of their names are gone. Their houses have vanished. Their voices disappeared into the sea breeze long ago. Yet their routines shaped this place far more than any battle ever did. Historians often discover that the ordinary details of daily life reveal the richest stories, showing how communities truly lived rather than how legends later imagined them. The moon drifts lower. Its reflection shortens across the water. Somewhere in the reeds, insects begin their quiet evening chorus. Nothing interrupts them. Nothing needs to. The harbor has finally become exactly what it always wanted to be. A peaceful place beside the sea. No longer busy. No longer crowded. Simply resting beneath the night sky. You take one final deep look across the calm bay. Then you allow your gaze to soften. The outlines of the old piers blur into the darkness. The stars melt gently into one another. The waves become nothing more than a steady rhythm. And before long, even the forgotten pirate port itself begins to fade. Not because it has vanished again, but because the story has carried it safely into your imagination, where it can remain as long as you wish. So the wind keeps blowing, the tide keeps turning, the stars keep shining over quiet water. And somewhere, hidden beneath layers of sand, roots, shells, and centuries, the pirate port time forgot sleeps peacefully still, waiting for dawn, waiting for the next tide, waiting as it always has, in perfect silence. The main story has reached its conclusion, but for a sleep-focused YouTube video, an extended good-night coda can help the audience drift off while gently reinforcing the atmosphere rather than introducing new events. By now, the harbor is only a silhouette. The sea and the sky have almost become the same color. Only the faint line of the horizon reminds you where one ends and the other begins. You remain seated on the old stone overlooking the bay. There is no reason to hurry home. There is nowhere else you need to be. The world feels content to move at the pace of the tide. A cool breeze slips across the water. It carries with it the scent of salt, damp earth, and distant wildflowers growing where warehouses once stood. Plants are often among the first quiet historians of abandoned places. Long after walls have fallen and roofs have disappeared, seeds carried by the wind continue the slow work of reclaiming every forgotten corner. You watch the grass bend and straighten, almost like waves rolling across the land. A cloud drifts lazily across the face of the moon. For a few moments the shoreline grows darker. Then the cloud passes, and silver light returns. The cycle repeats so gently that it barely feels like change at all. Out in the shallows, tiny fish disturb the perfectly smooth surface. Concentric circles spread outward until they disappear. The ocean is full of these quiet conversations. A ripple answering another ripple. A current meeting another current. Even in calm conditions, the sea is constantly moving in ways almost too subtle to notice. Somewhere behind you, an old fig tree rustles. Its roots have wrapped themselves around stones that were once part of a merchant's garden wall. Tree roots naturally seek moisture and tiny gaps in rock, and over many decades they can slowly separate carefully fitted blocks that seemed immovable when first placed together. Nature is patient. It never forces. It simply persists. You think of the generations who lived here, of mornings that began before sunrise, of loaves cooling on windowsills, of lanterns being extinguished at first light, of fishermen checking the wind with a damp finger held into the air, of children counting ships from the beach and believing every distant sail carried an adventure. No one among them expected to become forgotten. Perhaps no one ever does. A shooting star crosses the sky. It lasts less than a second. Meteors are often no larger than grains of sand or small pebbles, burning brightly as they enter Earth's atmosphere before vanishing high above the ground. Brief, beautiful, easy to miss if you happen to blink. The old harbor was much the same, busy for a little while, bright with life, then quietly gone. Yet even now, traces remain. A nail beneath the soil, a shell worked smooth by human hands, a broken bottle resting under layers of silt, a coin tucked into the corner of a vanished room. The smallest objects often survive the longest. Midnight passes unnoticed. No bell announces it. No watchman calls the hour. Only the stars have shifted slightly westward since you first sat down. The constellations continue their ancient journey exactly as they did when pirates sailed these waters, exactly as they did when the first settlers built their homes, and exactly as they will long after every modern harbor has changed beyond recognition. You close your eyes for just a moment. The sounds become even simpler. A wave, another wave, a whisper of wind, the faint call of a bird somewhere in the darkness. Then stillness again. When you open your eyes, the bay looks unchanged, as though time itself has decided to rest here for the night. Perhaps that is the real secret of the pirate port time forgot. Not hidden treasure, not secret tunnels, not lost maps, but the quiet understanding that every place, no matter how busy it once was, eventually becomes part of the landscape, part of the wind, part of the stories people tell when the day is done. The tide continues to rise. Then it will fall again. Morning will come. The sun will warm the old stones. The gulls will return. And somewhere beneath the grass, beneath the roots, beneath centuries of settled earth, the forgotten harbor will keep dreaming, peacefully, patiently, as it has through every season before, as it will through every season still to come. And with the soft rhythm of the sea echoing across the sleeping coast, the last lantern in your imagination grows dimmer and dimmer, until only the stars remain, watching over a place that time could hide, but never truly erase. The story has now fully concluded, but if you're aiming for a 2 to 3 hour sleep video, you can end with an extended, almost hypnotic wind down that slowly revisits the harbor one last time without introducing any new plot. Here's another peaceful closing passage. If you stayed until the very last hour before dawn, you would notice something curious. The silence is never truly silent. It has layers. The nearest is the gentle brushing of water against stone. Behind that comes the soft whisper of reeds moving together in the breeze. Farther still is the distant murmur of waves breaking beyond the outer reef, where the open ocean greets the shore with endless patience. Even on the calmest nights, coastlines are alive with quiet sounds. Ocean swells generated hundreds or even thousands of miles away can travel across entire seas before finally reaching land, arriving as little more than a steady pulse against the beach. You breathe in slowly. The air is cooler than it was an hour ago. Tiny drops of moisture have gathered on the grass. The old sailors would have called it a good sign. They often paid close attention to dew, mist, and humidity, knowing that subtle changes in the night's air could hint at the weather waiting just beyond sunrise. The stars remain overhead. Some seem fixed forever. Others appear to drift so gradually that only the most patient observer notices. In truth, the earth is turning beneath them, carrying every quiet harbor, every sleeping village, and every lonely lighthouse gently through the darkness. You imagine the forgotten port beneath your feet, not as ruins, not as an archaeological site, but as it was on an ordinary Tuesday long ago. The bakery doors are already open. Someone is sweeping the front step. A fisherman is repairing a torn net while humming softly to himself. Two children race each other toward the docks, stopping halfway because they have spotted a crab hiding under a bucket. A cooper rolls a finished barrel into the sunlight and taps it once with a wooden mallet. The sound rings out across the square. Perfect. No one thinks these moments are important. No one writes them down. History has a habit of recording kings, wars, and famous voyages while overlooking the people who simply wake up, go to work, greet their neighbors, and return home at sunset. Yet those ordinary routines are what truly give a place its heartbeat. A breeze passes through the imaginary streets. Laundry stirs on a clothesline. A shopkeeper props open a window. Someone laughs. A dog barks exactly twice before settling back into sleep. Then the vision fades as gently as it arrived. Only the present remains. Grass where cobblestones once lay. Wildflowers where barrels once stood. Trees whose roots now wrap around forgotten foundations. In some parts of the world, abandoned settlements become so completely reclaimed by nature that aerial photographs reveal their outlines more clearly than a person standing on the ground ever could. Patterns hidden at eye level quietly emerge from above. The eastern horizon begins to lighten. Not enough to disturb the stars. Just enough to soften the darkness. The first bird sings. Then another. Then another. The chorus grows almost imperceptibly, as though the morning itself is waking one careful note at a time. You stand and brush the dust from your clothes. There is no audience. No farewell ceremony. The harbor asks for nothing. It is content simply to exist. One last glance reveals the bay lying perfectly still. The same water that welcomed merchants. The same water that carried pirates. The same water that reflected lanterns, moonlight, thunderstorms, and countless forgotten faces. It remembers them all without choosing favorites. You begin walking away. Your footsteps become quieter with every stride. Soon they are lost beneath birdsong and wind. Behind you, the old port settles once more into peaceful anonymity. Ahead of you, the path disappears into the morning mist. And somewhere, carried almost invisibly on the salt breeze, comes the comforting scent of fresh bread. Perhaps it is only your imagination. Or perhaps, in places where enough stories have been lived, a few memories never completely leave. The tide rises. The tide falls. The stars return every night. And the pirate port time forgot continues its endless, unhurried sleep beneath the patient sky, where every wave is a lullaby, every breeze is a whispered memory, and every new dawn begins exactly as quietly as the last.